Major Pierce, while Montgomery's crime rate is lower compared to most cities of our size or larger, we do have some problems. One that bears some discussion is the question of burglaries, particularly in residential areas. What kind of problems do we have here in Montgomery with burglaries?
Skip, at the present time, most of our burglaries are occurring in the daytime, and I would say at the present time it's also in our apartment complex. Of course, we do have burglars of residents and also business places, but our main problem at the present time is in the complexes.
Why would you say that they're hitting apartment complexes more, say, than residential areas?
Well, I think it's because the people who live in apartment complex, your man and wife, they both work during the daytime and they leave the house alone. And then you've got a large amount of people living in these apartment complexes, and that just has more access to these burglars. So I think that's why it is. There's more people there to burglarize.
Right. Now, where a person who owns their own house might spend a good deal of time and money to protect themselves through possibly a burglar alarm system, that kind of thing, an apartment dweller really would not, in most cases, go to that extent. What could an apartment dweller do?
Well, he could add extra locks to his doors, and also he could, a lot of them could make sure that those doors are locked when they leave. We find many, many times people leave home during the daytime and never lock their door. And besides that, they leave windows unlocked. Well, this is just exactly what that burglar's looking for, a way to get in. And sometimes if that's not acceptable, they'll break in. But a lot of times they don't have to break in because the doors and windows are left open.
Do you think many of the incidents that we have here in Montgomery are amateurs as opposed to professional burglars?
Most of them are amateurs, yes, sir. We don't have too much professional burglar people in the city. No,
which means that a locked door or deadbolt door, for instance, would probably drive them away.
It would the amateurs, yes, sir. I think so.
What about when an apartment person is going to be gone, say for a week, is going to be out of town or something like that? Is there anything additionally they can do to protect themselves?
Well, not only apartments, but residential areas. Not to leave to stop your paper, to stop your milk coming, anything that would leave a sign that, hey, no one has been at this place for many, many days. Then the burglar is going to know this. Then that's going to give him a chance to break in. He knows no one's there, has been for several days.
Is there anything that the police can do to help, like when, say, somebody's going to be gone for a week or on a vacation or something like that?
Yes, we'd be glad for these people to give us a call, give us a location of their house, apartment. We have officers who does this on a daily basis. We'll go by and check these houses, see if they have been broken into. This is a program that we've had for many, many years, and it has been successful.
Would you compare the problems that you run into with juveniles here, the level of problems with, say, a Birmingham where they're having real serious problems with youth gangs, or in Atlanta where they've always, for a long time, had that kind of problem? What kind of problems do we have, or what kind of level of problems?
Well, I think our problems are there. I do not believe they reach the magnitude of Atlanta or Birmingham. We do have gangs in the city. We're able at the present time to be able to know what's happening, the people involved in the gangs, and most of their activities. But every time that a city gets a little bigger, you have a little more problems.
Would you say that's a major problem here? What kind of problems do you run into with young people here? What kind of things do you have to deal with?
Well, we deal with all crimes committed by young people. Burglaries, robberies, shoplifting, a lot of shoplifting in the stores.
Do you think that most young people understand how serious shoplifting is? Do you think that's a problem?
Well,
could it be a game for some of them, perhaps?
I think that it is. We have found that clubs, not gangs, clubs, this is some of the initiation that'll get something out of a store.
Right.
And I feel that a lot of them do it on a dare. And I believe that most of them, when you sit right down and talk with them, most of them do know that it's wrong.
Right.
Now, a lot of them don't realize that they can build time.
Right. What kind of penalties can you draw from shoplifting?
If you start dealing with grand larceny, you can deal 13 months and above.
And grand larceny is based strictly on the
amount you
value.
take. Yes, sir, anything above $5. But then another thing, if you are on the way out of the store and a individual that works at the store or security attempts to stop you and you use force to get away from, that ups it a little bit further.
So what kind of penalty could you conceivably be looking at just for a simple
Robbery.
dare?
Robbery.
Looking at robbery.
Yes, sir.
And what kind of time can you draw for that?
10 years or above.
So for on a dare to join a club, you could get
Yes,
10
sir,
years
you could
hard
get
time.
10 years. Yes, sir.
Okay, what kind of things do you think that parents in these cases aren't doing that they could be doing that might steer these kids away from this kind of thing?
Well, parents need to assume their responsibility as parents. They need to know where their children are. They need to know who their children are with. Parents need to be able to accept what their children do.
And accept the responsibility
Yes, sir.
for what they do.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We don't expect a mother or father to know exactly where their child is every moment,
Right.
but they ought to know when their child leaves the house where that child is going.
Do you see more now of parents simply turning their kids loose, not taking the responsibility, not feeling any responsibility for
No,
what
sir,
their
not
kids are
anymore than
doing?
it was 19 years ago when I worked the streets in the Youth Aid Division.
So you really don't think that it's a growing problem? It's just
No, sir, it's there. Parents won't assume their responsibility. They will not do it.
But of the kids that you see, that you work around, what kind of percentage would you put on the ones that cause problems versus the ones that are really straight kids?
Oh, I would say that probably 95% of our kids don't give us any trouble. Or maybe 96% don't give us any trouble. But that few percent, they'll deal you fits.
Great.
'Tis the season to be jolly, but many area kids are expecting to wake up to a barren Christmas. Once again, youth aid officers will make this holiday season merry for these children. Policemen have started to collect gift items from area businesses and private individuals. The officers are concerned about the total welfare of needy children and their families and are accepting other donations besides toys.
Non-perishable food items, clothing, this would be coats, dresses, pants, shirts, shoes, whatever anyone has or wish to contribute to this. As many of the families we come in contact with, these small children really don't even have sufficient clothing to even wear to school during the wintertime.
Bailey says the Youth Aid Division will also help find jobs for the children's parents. The families that get the special visit on Christmas Eve Day must meet certain qualifications.
Police officers come in contact with families where they have less than we do, actually underprivileged, and more or less just down on their luck. And we investigate each and every family to determine if they're a destitute family or not. If they are a destitute family, we will place that name on a list.
The Youth Aid Division will tell the parents about Santa's upcoming visit, but it will be a total surprise for the kids. Jane Matheson, WSFA TV News. All 940 dogs entered in today's show go through intense preparation for the titles for which they're competing. First of all, every dog must be pedigreed and AKC registered. A dog of good breeding costs between $500 and $800. Once you own the dog, you need to invest in strict training. Show dogs must also be properly maintained. That means a well-balanced diet, exercise, and meticulous grooming. Before every show, grooms ready each dog by cutting and trimming the coat, clipping the nails, applying hairspray, and even blowing it dry. A professional dog groomer charges around $30 for an appointment. The shows are just as well planned. Judges are all AKC licensed and must have a background in breeding or handling. It may sound complicated and expensive, but dog showers say it's well worth it. Besides the glory attained by the dog, the show is the biggest family sporting adventure that involves all ages. Jane Matheson, WSFA TV News.
tax sales. Administrators
Overtime required for employees to perform the necessary duties of the office. Recommended and requested that the budget amount be changed from $500 to $5,000. He stated that he did not feel that the overall budget. Motion was duly seconded by Mr. Gray and unanimously approved by the Commission.
$49.
That's correct, no bid. Be authorized to attend the conference and that they be reimbursed for all actual necessary expenses. And that appears to be it.
The fuel adjustment figure for the month of December will be $4.77 per thousand kilowatt hours. That's below the November charge of $6.40. In the background, the October charge was also $6.40. Then last month, the power company proposed a record $7.13 fuel charge, but the power company followed a PSC request and kept the charge at the October level of $6.40. That left a 72-cent per thousand kilowatt hour carryover. December's $4.77 charge includes this 72-cent carryover. The power company says they were wrong in some of their energy projections, about $8 million wrong. Instead of Alabama Power buying nearly $6 million worth of electricity from other utilities, generation was up in the state, and the utility instead wound up selling nearly $2 million worth of power to those other companies. Because customers of Alabama Power were paying for the anticipated $6 million purchase of power, the $8 million swing has brought the December charge down to its $4.77 level. Even so, this year's December charge is still higher than in December's past. In December of 1979, the charge was $3.30 per thousand kilowatt hours, while December 1978, $2.28 per thousand kilowatt hours. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
Investigators and sheriff's deputies are going out in teams of 2 to make the arrests. It can be a slow process because many suspects aren't home, and in some cases the addresses listed don't even exist. Of the total number under indictment, 134 are black females. Their ages vary, but most are in their 20s or 30s. Some face charges of fraud in both food stamp and aid to dependent children. The amount these people allegedly stole also varies. Some are charged with stealing as much as $1,000 worth of food stamps. The arrests are a result of an 8-week investigation by the Attorney General's Welfare Fraud Task Force, which discovered more than $160,000 in fraudulent claims. Once the people are under arrest, they're brought here to the Sheriff's Investigative Unit. They're booked, fingerprinted, questioned by an investigator, and then let out on bond. Investigators say they'll continue going door to door making welfare fraud arrests until all 169 are rounded up. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
The contents of the plane, 2 tons of Colombian marijuana with an estimated street value of $2 million. Officials say they're still not sure why the plane landed in Birmingham. They speculate the aircraft was low on fuel or the pilots lost their way in the fog. Maps inside the aircraft indicate it was headed for Gadsden. A check revealed the plane is registered to a California company, and the pilot apparently filed a flight plan from California to Gadsden, but police believe the Lockheed Lodestar was coming from South America. The pilot and co-pilot jumped out of the airplane as soon as it taxied to a stop. They escaped by jumping a fence and running away. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
Sources say that Mrs. Allen is suffering from a respiratory condition and is having other problems adjusting to life in the county jail.
When we talked with the 47-year-old former state treasurer this afternoon, she says she'll probably be working as a bookkeeper here at the Seton Haven Nursing Home, where she'll also be living until her 6-month term expires.
Mrs. Allen began serving her 6-month term November 3rd after Circuit Court Judge Perry Hooper reduced her original 3-year sentence for violating the state ethics law. She was convicted of using her office for personal gain and not fully reporting her finances. Kim Davis, WSFA, TV News.
The ad reads, "Young established couple wishes to adopt healthy infant, confidential," and then it gives a New York number. Montgomery District Attorney Jimmy Evans says this type of advertisement is illegal according to a state law.
One statute makes it unlawful and the other statute prescribes a penalty for those persons who seek to use the news media or any other media or advertising media for the purposes of adopting children. The first, it's unlawful, it's a misdemeanor for anybody to do that.
After talking with Evans, I called the New York couple to find out why they placed the ad in the paper. The woman who answered the phone says there are several reasons. She says the availability of a healthy white infant has decreased because infertility and abortion are on the rise. She says there's a minimum 7-year waiting period when adopting through an agency, and many people, including herself, are desperate to become parents and are willing to advertise. She says she's advertised in 3 other states, but says she didn't know it was illegal here. Evans says his office can't extradite the couple for a misdemeanor under state law. Advertiser Journal publisher Jim Martin says the ad got by his people who didn't know it's illegal, and he says as soon as they found out, they took the ad out. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
Well, I don't really think their position is as unsettled as some folks are led to believe, and I don't say that in the wrong vein. I think, of course, Jacobs and Coley, to me, are the quarterbacks. They were injured somewhat for the Notre Dame game. Jacobs played. I think Coley will be ready. Even Coach Bryant has said this for our ball game. Coley seems to be the better runner, the quicker runner. He handles the loaded and the option much better. However, Jacobs combines both running and passing better, and he has the experience. Young Walter Lewis is capable too, but I feel like that they'll go with Jacobs and Coley if they're well, and we're anticipating them being well, and those are the ones that we'll have to prepare for.
Paraphrasing the titles of 2 platinum records made renowned by the world-famous music group, the Commodores of Tuskegee sailed on in and took it easy with Governor James today. The 6-member group presented the governor a souvenir T-shirt. In return, Governor James told the group that as they travel around the world to take a part of Alabama with them, he presented each member the Alabama coat of arms. Governor James told the group how proud Alabama is of their accomplishments, and in honor of their success, he declared Thanksgiving Day Commodore's Day throughout the entire state. Drummer Walter Orange asked the governor if he's going to their Thursday night concert. The governor says, unfortunately, he has a previous engagement. Then the governor asked the Commodores when they became famous. Bass player Ron LaPred says it all started when they were a backup group for the then Jackson 5. He says they wore their own T-shirts one night at a concert in 1971, and they've been making themselves known worldwide ever since. The group is completing their 1980 American tour. That includes 96 stops. They've got 5 more concerts to go. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
What's it mean?
There are more than 300 regulating boards and agencies in the state designed to license and police special groups. The Sunset Subcommittee wants to single out about 100 of those agencies not specifically created by the Constitution and call them enumerated agencies in the new law. Enumerated agencies would come up for review every 4 years and would be terminated unless the legislature passed a bill allowing them to continue. Chairman Seth Hammett says in this way regulating boards will be forced to be accountable to someone. After the subcommittee meeting, the full Sunset Committee met to review the Board of Examiners for speech pathologists and audiologists. The chairman of that group testified that he doesn't believe his board tries to limit competition through its licensing procedure. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
PSC Commissioners Jim Folsom Jr. and Pete Matthews both told the interim committee that the PSC needs some changes. Folsom recommended a separation between the commissioners and the staff's operation. Matthews said it makes it difficult for the staff to work when they've got 3 bosses. Both agreed that the commissioners' salaries have to be much higher to attract qualified people. Montgomery County District Attorney Jimmy Evans' primary concern was for protection of the consumer in all rate cases. Evans says the PSC staff needs to be separated from the commissioners and only responsible for arguing against rate hike requests on behalf of the consumer. Evans also wants stiffer penalties for those who use falsified information in a rate case. Dr. Marion Shirley of the University of Alabama at Birmingham thinks the PSC has lost its credibility to the game of politics. Mrs. Shirley wants the commissioners appointed, saying the PSC will remain inadequate as long as the elected commission does the regulating. The legislative committee's report on any proposed changes will be considered by the legislature when it meets in February. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
During last week's meeting, Mayor Farmer and Councilman Watkins disagreed sharply over the proposed transfer. Watkins voted against bringing up the measures then, which carried them over until today. Both the Broadview and Highland Avenue projects are in predominantly white districts, and Mayor Farmer says Watkins' action was a result of racial hypocrisy and bigotry. The mayor also said in the past he had given favorable treatment for Watkins' district, but he wouldn't in the future if Watkins continues to display such behavior. Later, both men exchanged letters concerning their positions. But today, when the issue came up for a vote, Councilman Watkins was the only person making any comment on the project's funding. When the vote was taken, Watkins again was the only member voting against them. In other council business, the mayor was authorized to borrow about $1 million to pay off some city bills. The city says ad valorem taxes are not meeting projected levels, which necessitates the loan, which may be paid back in 45 days. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
That Commissioner Cooper will institute savings. They will look at programs. They will hopefully try to combine some administrative things, and it will save dollars and anything from state travel to whatever, and do a lot on the telephone and go see some small things. But that amount of money, I think, can be saved in that department, and we've looked at it very closely. We're going to watch that very closely, and we're not going to have a cut in programs. But by the same token, we're charged with the responsibility of spending taxpayers' money the best possible way. And we're going to do that. So we watch every penny, and we're very tight with the money. So we're not going to be easy to spend money, and if we don't need to spend $6 million and get the same service, then that's what we're going to do.
And you think it can be done?
Yes, I certainly think it can.
Out of the headquarters, they were fired, but it was strange because they were volunteer workers. They weren't. I'm appalled by the latest statements that the Justice Department has made in its efforts to turn public opinion against the Klan. Its reference to the Greensboro incident in trying to prove Klan's violence is a perfect example of the Justice Department using innuendos, outright lies, and outright lies to discredit the Klan.
Tuskegee Institute enters the annual Thanksgiving Day clash with Alabama State, sporting a 4-5 record. But as the old saying goes, you can throw the record books out on this one. Tuskegee is coming off a big homecoming win over Alabama A&M November 15th. A dramatic last-second field goal won it for Tuskegee, and from all indications today, the Golden Tigers are still riding high. Coach Haywood Sissom anticipates few problems getting his team mentally prepared for Alabama State.
It wasn't hard to get us up when I played here some 35 years ago. They know what the game means, and they'll be ready.
How about the opponent this week? What do you think of Alabama State?
Well, real tough opponent. I don't think the opponent is as tough as the game itself. And what I mean by that is Alabama State's homecoming. I wish it was our homecoming. I wish we were playing at home like they're doing. So it's not the opponent. It's how we play, and if we play well, we think we'll be all right.
How things been this week as far as practice is concerned?
Well, practices have been pretty good, about like you would expect after a big emotional win that we had last week. So practices are pretty good.
Tomorrow night, a look at Tuskegee's Turkey Day opponent, the Alabama State Hornets. From the campus of Tuskegee Institute, Dave Cody, WSFA TV Sports.
The Laotians have much to be thankful for on this, their first American Thanksgiving. Many of them lived in the remote hills in their country where they protected our GIs during the Vietnam War, and later about 90% of them were driven from their land. Now they're safe here in Montgomery, where they're participating in various projects to orient them to American life. Those classes are sponsored by the Capitol Heights Baptist Church, where Reverend Gil Barrow says the Laotians are becoming more comfortable with their American lifestyles.
The beautiful thing has been that they have shown trust and confidence to us. Their willingness to listen and to follow. Never one time have we found that they did not trust us. They're very anxious, very loving people, and a very trusting people.
After dinner, the Thanksgiving story was told in a way they could understand the beginning of our American history. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
During the periods 1963 through 66, 1971 through 74, what was done either by Mr. Rayford, who is not a member of the Access Secretary to the Commission, or done in one
objection is not addressed to the affidavit of James Furnish, hearing officer, nor do we object to the deposition.
Affidavits are given in the...
Just picking it up. Only the third paragraph of it has anything to do with this motion. The rest of it has to do with this. And that is stipulated. Their names are
over a copy of the stipulation. The parties stipulate that the legislative members I have 4. We're good, that's right. We don't represent them,
Exhibit A, B.
We have that was 7 in number. They did not ratify this action.
We originally were going to have it on the Tuesday's not going to be there to do it at the Civic Center, but
Through today at noon, we've raised $2,070,000 in round figures, which seems to be quite a lot of money, which in fact it is quite a lot of money. We have a goal of $2,180,000, which puts us some $110,000 short with just less than 1 week to go. We know at least where the monies were last year, assuming that we can get the same contributions from those individuals that we did last year, we can meet this goal.
Where is the main office? Is it down in the admin building?
Yeah.
Down there, where it really gets down to. Do you work here in this division?
Without the head of the running gap.
The Highland Avenue Church of Christ is one of several churches working on the Euro campaign. They say their main concern is to clean up programs like Dallas, Soap, The Newlywed Game, Three's Company, and Saturday Night Live. Pastor Ray Dutton says there are other shows that are objectionable, but says his organization wants to start with a small number.
The object is not to get rid of. We would like for them to clean up the act and get the emphasis on sex and violence out of the programs themselves.
Dutton says the best way to have any influence is through the sponsors of these shows. He says several months ago, his congregation wrote the three biggest TV advertisers, Warner Lambert, American Home Products, and General Foods, to ask them to use their influence to clean up the shows. Since buying these products is in effect supporting the shows, Dutton feels his group can have some control over how the advertising dollar is spent. So far, only Warner Lambert has responded. As a result, the group's members have decided to boycott products sold by the other companies, like Bird's Eye Frozen Foods, Gravy Train Dog Food, and even Kool-Aid. An ad appeared in the paper this past week trying to recruit people to join the Clean Up TV campaign, and Dutton says so far he's gotten over 500 letters. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
How's your health been during your stay here?
Well, I'm pretty good other than I'm allergic to cigarette smoke. Everybody else smokes.
Have you been treated pretty well here?
They've been real good. They really have.
Are you surprised about the order that you've gotten?
Well, I was to start with until I found out about it. I was.
Do you know what you'll be doing over at your new place?
Doing bookkeeping and accounting, I think. Okay. I'm having to hurry because they're waiting on me.
The release comes as a result of an order from Circuit Court Judge Perry Hooper. It says, the opinion of the court is that Melba Till Allen is not a risk prisoner, and with a letter from the Seton Haven administrator, Sister Marillac, requesting that Mrs. Allen be permitted to serve her time at Seton Haven, the court feels that the Catholic retirement home is an excellent place for Mrs. Allen to serve her time to the benefit of both her and society. Mrs. Allen will be working as a bookkeeper without pay. She'll also be living at the retirement complex until her 6 months reduced sentence expires. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
This fire started with a pan left simmering on a kitchen stove. It took only 2 hours for the pan to ignite and cause this much damage. Montgomery fire officials say they expect fires like this one to happen every Thanksgiving because of extreme carelessness.
Taking time up with friends and relatives while cooking is being prepared, going to the store and leaving foods cooking, these all cause overheated and overcooked foods to ignite.
If your stove does catch on fire, you should first contain the flames within the cooking vessel.
Once the lid is placed on the skillet, then they can turn the source of fire off.
Chief Sutherland says baking soda and salt, but not water, effectively combat small kitchen fires. If it spreads beyond the stove, you should contact the fire department. Jane Matheson, WSFA TV News.
He took a few snaps the last 2 days, and after re-examination, and the doctors advised us to forget him for a while.
Quick word about Auburn. Offensively, you've described them as explosive and overall a physical team.
Yeah, I think, of course, they have a lot of football players down there. We know because we try to recruit a lot of them, and they're the most explosive team we've played, and it may be the best offensive team we've played. They've been scoring a lot of points on everyone, and I think the defense is began to come around. They've had people could play, but they had a lot of injuries, I understand it. And they have an excellent kicking game. They always have an excellent kicking game. Of course, that's where you start, and that's where we try to start. If they beat us with a kicking game, why they'll win the ball game.
Kick one before?
Well, I think they're real sky high for this game, and they should be, because this is for state pride and state bragging rights, and we there's three things that we look for in this game, and number one is our homecoming, and number two is determine whether or not we have a win in the season, the breaking point.
Right. You
And
haven't had anything but in your tenure, right?
That's right. And number three is playing Tuskegee, and I always get keyed up when I play Tuskegee.
And then the exposure and certainly our governor on
helping and promoting and doing
Well,
the study that was done by the chamber.
with a camera and a notepad, and he'll observe every time he, does anything. And see, my dad has covered, I believe, Louisiana, Alabama. If fishing or hunting is their bag, why not Alabama? They've been reading about it, hearing about it, and that's what we want to do.
160 million exposures in dollars, round dollars, and then the exposure and the of 100.
Demand has become just enormous, more so than what was ever imagined in the very beginning, because there's apparently a tremendous amount of sentiment in our nation that the television has gotten out of hand as far as those particular areas are concerned, and everybody feels helpless. And they were ready for somebody to do something.
During the presidential election, the black community threw its support behind President Carter and his social and domestic programs. Now the Carter administration is on its way out, and Ronald Reagan is coming in with his Republican views on domestic programs. Tuskegee Mayor Johnny Ford, one of the organizers of the conference, doesn't look on the Reagan administration as a threat, but does say it calls for a shift in strategy and as far as lobbying efforts are concerned in Washington.
It simply means that what we've got to learn is that politics is a game. You win some, you lose some.
Was there a loss in this one, though?
Oh, obviously, because we think that President Carter was more sensitive to the needs of our people. But the point is, we must go on.
Although the conference is watching activities on the federal level, Governor James's aide Jim Littleton reminded the black mayors that there are plenty of resources available to them at the state level. But Littleton says those resources will be wasted unless there is a togetherness developed to make those programs and services work for all of the black communities. The conference started 8 years ago with only 8 members, but has now grown to 21. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
When we last talked with the Sanchez family, they were both working and adjusting to life in America. Today they're unemployed because of widespread layoffs, and Xiomara is pregnant. In addition, January's rent is looming ahead of them.
La casa esta está pagada ya.
Para diciembre.
Está pagada para diciembre, después de diciembre ya.
They already paid December, but after December they don't have any money to. They have to move out of here and sell the furniture. Vender los muebles.
Sí, hay que vender todo esto. Y se de aquí no se
They
puede.
bought the TV and the whole thing. So they probably have to move out unless they get some assistance, some help, or they get a job back.
What does Ronaldo plan to do about his wife's pregnancy?
¿Qué va a hacer tú en cuanto al estado de ella?
Bueno, pensaba, yo pensé que no me iba a botar de trabajo, yo iba a pagar el estado de ella, porque yo no tengo hijos, yo quisiera tener un hijo. Pero con esta situación que tengo, no sé.
He said he doesn't know. He thought that with his job he was going to pay for the whole thing because he wants to have a baby.
This is the Sanchez's first winter in Montgomery. Ronaldo says although they lack warm clothing, they'll try to adapt to the weather. Meanwhile, their sponsor, Pat Alston, says she's hoping for clothing contributions through the local refugee office. And Ronaldo continues his practice of pantomime, which he performed in Cuba. The Sanchez's are spending Thanksgiving Day with the 7 other Cuban refugees in the area. They're all eating turkey dinner at the home of Puerto Rican friends. Jane Matheson, WSFA TV News.
Head of the Attorney General's Consumer Fraud Division, Fincher Allen, says Alabama is ripe for rip-off artists. He says there are about 15,000 types of fraud in the country, and Alabama has one of each. He says the Attorney General has tried to get a consumer protection law through the legislature for the past 9 years, but the bills have never even come out of committee.
I think there have been several reasons for us not having passed thus far. One, a misconception by the business people that we're out to control them, to regulate them, to get them involved in a lot of red tape. It's not the case.
Allen says the Consumer Fraud Division is trying to protect the reputable business person as well as the consumer. But he says it's necessary for a law to be passed because without it, his office is only 50% effective in stopping the rip-off artists. Allen says if a law is passed, he'd like to be able to put some of these people in jail.
The only recourse consumers have now is trying to get some kind of satisfaction themselves from companies. If that fails, the Consumer Fraud Division can try and mediate complaints, but without a law, they're not always able to get results. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
Don't worry the first time you...
Getting everything in writing is one of the most important things a consumer can do to protect himself. Whether it's home or car repair, this is the only way to prove that the service promised was not done. To protect yourself from rip-off, be aware of something for nothing. Be alert. Think. Ask questions. Ask for references and credentials, and never take people at their word.
A person may approach you without the proper credentials. One thing the consumer could look for is it an out-of-state vehicle or an out-of-county vehicle? And they will tell you that they're going to put some siding on your house or a roof or whatever, and then they'll ask for money up front. And we advise the people never give money up front and then get everything in writing.
Car repair is one area where rip-offs occur most often. To make sure you're not being taken advantage of, there are some things to remember before you pay your money.
They could maybe put some parts on the car that the car really didn't need. Would be one way. They could maybe charge too much for the parts. Would be 2 ways. It's really hard to tell if they put the part on whether the car needed it or whether it didn't need it.
If you're wondering whether a buying club or mail-order business is reputable, the Consumer Fraud Office can tell you if there have ever been any complaints filed on that company before. Fraud is widespread in Alabama, but if you remember these tips, you can save yourself some grief and some money. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
Alabama State got the breaks this afternoon. Tuskegee Institute did not, as evidenced by Donnie Egbuna's 34-yard field goal attempt, blocked here by Reginald Benton. Tuskegee's Freddie Williams tries to pick it up and run with it. He fumbles, and Dwight Crenshaw, the holder on the field goal try, recovers for Alabama State. That led to a 24-yard field goal by Egbuna moments later. The Nigerian sidewinder put the Hornets on top 3-0 with 9 minutes remaining in the first quarter. John Caldwell and company, nicknamed the Bomb Squad, then went to work. Caldwell capped a 97-yard scoring drive with a dive into the end zone to put ASU up 9-0. Egbuna's extra point try was blocked. Tuskegee failed to get on the board the entire first half, but the Golden Tigers behind reserve quarterback Alston Mealy were a different team in the second half. Mealy came off the bench to guide Tuskegee to a score on its first possession. The freshman ran the wishbone to perfection. He scampered in here from 13 yards out. It was 9-7. But State soon adjusted to the freshman's flashy style of play. The Hornet defense, led by William Daniels and John Thornton, kept Mealy on his back much of the second half. Alabama State went to the shotgun for the first time in the fourth quarter. Quentin Jones' 8-yard run set up another Egbuna field goal. The Nigerian good from 28 yards on this one, and the Hornets held a slim 12-7 lead with 7 minutes left in the game. But the Hornets then iced it a couple of minutes later when a bad center snap cost Tuskegee 2 points. The final, 14-7, Alabama State a winner for the 6th consecutive time over Tuskegee Institute, and Hornet coach George James keeps his winning season streak alive at 21 straight. Dave Cody, WSFA TV Sports.
The Exxon company says to more effectively cope with the misuse, it's amending the terms of its credit card guide. It's now required that the correct vehicle license number and state be recorded on every credit card ticket at the time of a sale. In addition, and effective immediately, Exxon stations where misuse or lost or stolen credit cards is most serious may at their election require to legibly record on every credit sale ticket at the time of the sale the buyer's driver's license number. The Exxon company says the problem of misusing credit cards has become so acute the past 6 months that losses average more than $100 per dealer and as high as $8,000 for a single store. Of the some 12,000 Exxon credit cards reported lost or stolen, the company says almost 10% of them are used for unauthorized purchases. Exxon says to require driver's license numbers as well as vehicle tag numbers on credit card purchases protects the customer and should reduce losses due to the misuse of credit cards. George Mitchell, WSFA TV News.
The State Revenue Department says private aircraft should be listed as other personal property and taxed 20% of fair market value. The actual tax depending on the millage rate in a city and a county. Some private airplane salespeople and private aircraft owners claim the tax could put some retailers out of business and force some owners to get rid of their planes. They say the average private plane sells for about $25,000, but the communications and navigation equipment, or avionics, causes the price to vary. The tax could amount to several hundreds of dollars. Many of the small craft owners say their flying is a hobby, and if business enters the picture, they could better understand the tax. Salespeople say interest rates is pushing them to the wall, and the idea of another tax on the general aviation business would really hurt. Enforcement of the law, which has been on the books for years, is up to the county tax collector. They were less than enthused about collecting a property tax on pleasure boats. The matter was quietly dropped. A list of private aircraft owners by the Federal Aviation Administration can be supplied to the tax collectors, who can collect the property tax according to the book value of a private plane, the same way values of automobiles are established. George Mitchell, WSFA TV News.
With the rising popularity of wood-burning stoves and fireplaces to cut the high cost of utility bills during the winter, more and more people are buying chainsaws to cut the wood. Bill Mayfield says accidents occur because many people have never used a chainsaw and don't know what they're doing.
The most common one is caused by kickback, or when the blade actually comes back and hits the person. Often it hits them in the head. And another large area of accidents are hand injuries, primarily left hand, because you usually hold the saw, the throttle with your right hand, and the left hand will get into the blade, either by the hand slipping off the bar or by the saw kicking back. And you know, if the saw is, if you're sawing up over your head and it kicks back, you're naturally going to try to stop it with that left hand.
Mayfield says when buying a chainsaw, look for one with a chain brake device, padded cushion handles, and one that doesn't make a lot of noise. Mayfield also says it's a good idea to buy from a store that will let you run the saw before you take it home. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
Bueno, pensaba, yo pensé que no me iba a botar de trabajo. Es un, malo. Agradecido, happy.
Happy, yes.
Happy. For lady pay for my house. It's good. Yeah. My wife and me, damos, thank you very much.
The Montgomery Police Department created the bypass detail to keep increased holiday traffic moving as smoothly as possible. 5 patrolmen are covering areas of the southern and eastern bypass between 10 a.m. and 10 p.m., beginning today. Corporal Leland Sims says the detail's primary purpose is to assist motorists during breakdowns, but patrolmen are also keeping an eye out for traffic violators.
Well, we will give citations if they pull to the right in the emergency lane. That emergency lane is designed for breakdowns or either an accident where we have to pull them over to the side of the road. We request the motorists stay in the roadway.
The command post at the corner of Carmichael Road and the eastern bypass is where officers map out their day's plans and relay traffic information. It will stay in operation through January 3rd. Jane Matheson, WSFA TV News.
The women are going to be in the trailer monitoring Channel 9. So if you're on the bypass and you need help, you can turn your CBs to Channel 9 and one of our members will assist you.
Hey, what's wrong with
I'm keeping the shelter real warm.
One of y'all related? I am. sequence is to, in effect, reorganize the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. We have, of course, undergone a transition in the past few months. He will be happy to explain the true...
Can't build a mass movement that way. And in Georgia, and dependable as things now stand.
Certainly we hope there's not going to be a race war, but if there is, to prepare for it is paramount to the same thing that the United States did at Pearl Harbor. And we're not going to be caught at Pearl Harbor. The white race is not going to go through that. There will be no Pearl Harbors for white people in this country. We're going to be ready.
When I got around here, the fire was contained to the back of the building, but there was no way we could get inside the building. And we couldn't get to the flame until we had to fight smoke first before we get to the flame, which I don't love to fight the smoke first, but we had to do something. And it took us about 2 hours and a half to contain this fire.
We've been having a lot of out of town because mostly from Florida and up the northern states.
Started Wednesday night. We stayed open late Wednesday. Opened up Thursday morning. There was people waiting when we come down here to open up Thursday morning. And it's been like this ever since, say, Wednesday night. This is a regularly traveled tourist route. I guess they come through here a lot because 331 going down to Florida.